truth is on air. City Talk 105.9.
This is City Talk 105.9.
This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill.
Do not be afraid. We are now in control of what you hear.
1, 2, 3, testing.
A journey to the far reaches of knowledge and the unknown.
I can't believe I just saw that.
From aliens to angels, conspiracies to cover-ups.
One soul and preeminent power.
From extraterrestrials to exposing the truth.
I'll try to explain as much as I can.
You're listening to Planet X. Planet X, exclusive to City Talk 105.9.
Hi, I'm Neil Atkinson, and welcome to another Planet X Live each and every Sunday here on Liverpool's City Talk 105.9. We're on digital, we're online, and we're on YouTube across the world. So, what's it all about? Well, if you're a newbie, if you're a first-time listener, I know we've got quite a few after the ICKE show last week. It's where we discuss each and every Sunday all things supernatural, paranormal, spiritual, all of that, to exposing the truth and unraveling suppressed news and alternative views. And to help me out, each and every week we have our Planet experts, Stan the Man, Jackie Highway, and Steve Mera from Phenomena Magazine. Welcome, guy.
Good evening.
How are we? We okay?
We're fine, yes.
No Dan the Man just yet. Apparently, I've been told the dilithium crystals have run out, and
no.
warp factor 7 is not working. He's basically missed the train.
Oh.
So he's apparently on his way as we speak.
Good,
so hopefully he should be joining us very soon. But anyway, Jackie and Steve are here. We're going to be talking to local researcher David Lloyd, and live from the States, a guy called Mark McCandish, a little later on, as our main topic tonight is all about chemtrails. Now, there's a bit of a story. If you're tuning in and thinking, hang on a minute, it says on the website you've got Dane Wigington. Well, we originally were supposed to have Michael Murphy, who is the American filmmaker who made What in the World Are They Spraying? And
Fantastic
why in the world
film,
are they spraying?
by the way.
It's great, yeah. And we're going to try and get it. If you've not seen it, we'll get it on the Facebook and on the website. The link's there, so you can have a look at that. Now, Michael pulled out a couple of days ago for family reasons, and then I got an email last night from Dane saying that he couldn't make it because something has happened over there in the States.
It happens, especially on subjects like this, you know.
Yeah. So Dane said, listen, I've got somebody else for you, and I've just been chatting to him on the phone before we came on, and he sounds like a very interesting guy. He was also in the film, and his name is Mark McCandish, and just to give you a little bit of his background, he has spent 30 years working in defense and classified black projects. He's a whistleblower, and he has also, this is the interesting thing for me, he's been working with back engineering what he calls off-world vehicles.
Off-world vehicles? Interesting.
I like the sound of that. Yeah. So we'll be talking to Mark about that, and also his view on chemtrails, the murky world of atmospheric geoengineering, commonly known as chemtrails. What's your take on it?
Well, you know, it shifted over the years. I mean, from 30 years ago, you didn't hear anything about chemtrails. I mean, I remember as a kid, you know, all those blue skies go to Wales every year. It was 80, 90 degrees, clear blue skies as far as you could see, and that was the same for year after year after year. And then all of a sudden, the weather changes. You know, and you have to start questioning, well, why is the weather changing? And I have seen aircraft flying over, and I've seen the way they populate, they produce these sort of layered clouds, and they seem to just spread across the whole sky, causing this haze effect. And of course, you know, we're kind of waving slowly waving by to the blue skies, aren't we?
Well, we just got to, because I don't want to dumb the subject down a little bit, but just for any of our listeners who don't know what we're talking about, there is, of course, a contrail, which is the condensation trail, or streaks of condensed water vapor created by the by an airplane or
that
a
only
rocket at high
happens at
altitudes.
certain
Yeah.
of course, certain heights.
And that's a
we see them.
contrail.
Yeah, because they disappear very quickly, Neil.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can watch them and you can clearly see the difference because contrails, you know, there's obviously something else in there, not just your normal, you know, not just vapour. There's something presumed to be added to it.
So this is chemtrails.
This is the chemtrail, and
Okay.
they plume out, get bigger and larger, and they spread over, and they literally haze across the whole sky. Now, I live very close to an international airport back up at Manchester, and, you know, you're very lucky to catch a little bit of blue sky because these things, they just completely cover the sky and it's from right through. And unfortunately, you know, it causes obviously people, you don't go to see the good weather anymore. But the conspiracy side to that is that what are they putting up there and the reasons why.
Okay, well, we're going to be talking more about what in the world are they spraying. It's a great film, and I do implore you to watch it. It's widely available on the internet, but we will get the links on the website and on the Facebook. I think Jackie's going to do that very soon for us. But there's a clip that I'm going to play from it, and he kind of sums it up really well. He's a brilliant author, G. Edward Griffin. This is his take on the whole subject.
I'm very aware of the chemtrail versus contrail controversy. As far as I'm concerned, it's an open and shut case. I have been watching the development of jet travel from its very beginning. I used to live near the Los Angeles airport. Remember when the first jets came in and landed? Man, they made a big noise. We never heard a noise like that before. And we used to go down and sit at the end of the runway and watch these jets come in and take off because it was a novel experience. I've been watching jets all my life, and I know about jet contrails. I've watched them. They're vaporized moisture, ice crystals, and they get out there in the atmosphere, and then they effervesce and evaporate and then disappear, and you can see them. Plane moves along, and the little white trail follows right behind it, and usually about 10 or 20 lengths of the plane or thereabouts, and then it's gone. And you can still see them that way, by the way, once in a while. So there goes a contrail. These other things we're talking about are not at all the same phenomena at all. These planes go by, and they billow out this white smoke, and it covers the sky from horizon to horizon. It doesn't dissipate at all. And they crisscross each other, and you see this thing cover the sky and turn it milky, and then people start having trouble breathing, and then you hear stories about the aluminum and barium deposits that they're picking up and the residue. And you put it all together, and I don't see how anybody who's got their eyes open and their mind open can come to any other conclusion but that somebody is spending a lot of money and effort to spray the planet. The question is, why? I have my own theories, but I hope that there will be some good investigative reporters go out there and get us the answer.
There we go, a clip from the fabulous film, What in the World Are They Spraying? That was the author, G. Edward Griffin, summing it up quite nicely there, I think. This is Planet X. We will get into the whole chemtrails debate in just a little while. But first, Steve, tell us about your week in the world of the weird.
It's been absolutely hectic because obviously National Geographic pumped out their little Wild Coast Files 2, which is a TV show all about weird and strange things. And I was actually investigating things that fall from the sky in this case. And I
think the links are on the Planet X Facebook page, aren't they?
There's some links there. And it was a fascinating subject regarding panspermia and where these things may have come from, and is there extraterrestrial biological isotopes in it? You know, is there evidence of that there's a mass amount of life in space? That went out on, and I think they are repeating them over the National Geographic Wild Channel. So
it's worth just checking it out just for Steve's crazy professor moustache.
They do me up really well. Crawling across the fields and analysing.
How long ago was that you had that?
Oh, it was only 18 months ago, but you know, you have to fit the part, don't you?
Absolutely.
But it is available on YouTube for viewing anyway. It's listed under Bird Apocalypse. It was about strange birds as well, about sudden flocks of birds just falling out of the sky, so that was interesting. But we've also had some UFO sightings. Now, for some of our listeners, they might recall not too long ago of an alleged rocket or satellite burn up in orbit, and it pretty much came right over the UK. It was seen right across
I think
the
Gail
country.
posted some stuff on the Facebook
She
page.
did. Now, that was really interesting because she actually claimed to possibly have seen a UFO after the event, or very close to the event, and she posted up a photograph. Now, I had a look at that photograph and I'm a little bit confused over it, so I'm going to have to talk a little bit more to Gail about that and what she actually saw and what she actually photographed. But we've also had other people who have contacted us regarding their claim to seeing something a little bit odd. literally seconds or minute after the incident of watching this. I mean, I was lucky to see it pass over the house, weren't we? I mean, we did see it. And I tell you what, it's like a scene out of Armageddon. You know? I've never seen anything like it. And all these things were exploding off it. It was absolutely fantastic. And but I didn't. That's all I saw. But people have been contacting me saying that they saw an object with a string of blue lights around it, and it was moving relatively fast. So we're wondering if people have seen this sort of thing, basically very close to that event. So we're working on that. We've also had a haunted pub the other day in Reddish. Very interesting, because we looked at some of the footage that they have, and we were scratching our heads, what could this be? And it was only happening on one of the cameras, so we went downstairs, and the absolute pub's full of people, and we thought, well, glad the landladies kept it low-key and not told everybody. So we're there looking at looking at this camera and seeing if there's any explanation for these strange things it's picking up during the night. And all of a sudden, the DJ throws on Ghostbusters, and everyone's up and standing there and looking at us. And I thought, oh, no. So it was a quick retreat from there. But I think we may have found a rational explanation for that one. Yeah. We think it could be a bug in the lens. Yeah, and what happens is, because it's so close, the CCTV camera is just creating a blur, and that blur seems to move around. Now, when people are looking at it, it's like when you capture these dust orbs in front of your camera. When you look at the photograph, you think they're actually in the room, but they're very close to the camera, and I think that's exactly the same thing that's happening there. And so we've managed to be able to rationalise that. We've got a few other things.
Steve, I hate it when there's a boring explanation for it.
In the camera, it does happen, but let's not take away the fact that there are strange paranormal things that do take place, and they are plentiful, across the country. But I think in this case, we've managed to find a rational explanation.
Okay. Well, if you find anything weird and wonderful out there, anything to do with the paranormal, the spiritual, the supernatural, then do please get in touch with Steve. He just loves anything a bit weird, don't you?
I've been looking into the red-eyed vigilante of Runcorn. It's gone a bit quiet there, but I'm on his trail.
He's on there. He's on there. So anything a bit weird, then Steve is your man. Get in touch with them via the show, planetxlive.co.uk. By the way, if you want to get any questions on chemtrail-type questions tonight for any of our special guests, then lots of different ways you can get in touch. You can text talk to 61025. So it's talk, the word talk, then your question, tell us who you are as well, and send it off to 61025. Or you can also do it via Facebook or Twitter. Jackie is standing in for Dan until he gets here. There's quite a few things coming through already.
Oh, there is,
There is. We have quite a few pictures coming through from Paul Chambers over some of the skies in Chester last year.
Interesting photographs.
Yeah, they are quite interesting. I've actually posted onto the website the what in the world are they spraying? So if everybody wants to have a look at that. And again,
try and do it after the show, because it's about an hour long.
It is. It's about an hour and a half, but it's all there for viewing.
Because I put the full-length version on, sorry. And also, there's some pictures that Paul's taken. These are taken above his house in Warrington. So, keep the
photos coming, guys. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Just on the subject of the forums, thank you to everyone who's been getting in touch on the forum. Some cracking stuff on there. And apologies. Last week, of course, it was David Icke, and Steve, you couldn't make it in.
No.
But you know what? I don't even think it would have mattered if any of us
David,
hadn't turned up.
I've known David for years, and it's the same old story. You ask a question, you get a 20-minute reply.
He's
but
a
it's
great speaker.
Absolutely riveting, isn't it?
Brilliant speaker. But we couldn't get any of the forum questions in. I think we managed one or two. So sorry.
It happens. But hey, do you know what? He's here to talk. And the amount of information he put out in the short space of time that we had was amazing.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
And some of the feedback was that it was nice to actually hear David talk without being interrupted. So, it was good little bit of feedback. But hi and welcome if you are a new listener to Planet X. Right, next we're back with Chemtrails.
Planet X. The truth is on air. City Talk 105.9. The radio show that officially does not exist. This is Planet X. Planet X on City Talk 105.9.
This is inevitably military or something going on. The government, the Air Force, they send out what's known as CHAP, and it's a way to experiment with the radar systems. And when you see this kind of a pattern like this, you can rest assured there's something going on. They're actually little bitty magnetic and little bitty strips of, whether it's aluminum, they change it, but what happens is the radar deflects off of all these little pieces.
And the number one reason you should visit New Zealand.
We have chemtrails too, just like America.
There is a growing citizens movement demanding an explanation of chemtrails.
And I talked to my NSA buddies at Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base, and Buckley, where I was actually their doctor taking care of the pilots flying and spraying the chemtrails. So I know it's real. If anybody says it's not real, they're full of it.
Too long beyond veils. Anyone can see air spray clear as day. What goes up must come down. Serious say it's falling down. It truly is. We taste and smell it. Trace elements collated. Scientific debates develop. Base elements is evident. Aluminium oxide and barium prevalent. A million crops die. It dissolves in water. But dehydrates the brain. Rips immune systems, heart, lungs, and dilates the brain.
Could a strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention.
Well, they say the government is dumping chemicals on us to control or manipulate the weather.
And they say the unusual-looking jet trails in the sky are actually chemical-laden chemtrails.
People say the government is up there in airplanes spraying all kinds of chemicals to change or manipulate the weather, leaving what you see there, and they call that a chemtrail.
So when I look up there and I think are contrails, you're telling me are chemtrails?
Yes, that a contrail would be dissipated by now.
And it's interesting, Dale and Christina, this is of interest not just in this country, but European countries and frankly all over the world. A lot of folks interested in it.
Well, Dave, you mentioned that climatologists and others who study the atmosphere believe that they'd be able to surely spot any kind of signs of an ominous plot.
This is Planet X on City Talk 105.9.
It is Planet X. I'm Neil Atkinson. We've got Steve Mayer and Jackie in with us at the moment. And chemtrails is what we're talking about. Now, the chemtrail conspiracy theory holds that some trails left by aircraft are actually chemical or biological agents deliberately sprayed at high altitudes for purposes undisclosed to the general public. Programs directed maybe by government officials. The theory is not accepted by the scientific community, which states that they are just normal contrails, as there is no scientific evidence supporting the chemtrail theory. Or is there?
What in the world are they spraying? Thank God people are asking this question. That's all we want.
And my only final thought is that we asked the question, what in the world are they spraying? And we now know what it is. And folks, you're not going to like it.
Another great clip from a great film, What in the World Are They Spraying? We'll go back to the film throughout the course of the show, and we'll be talking to one of the people featured in that film, Mark McCandish, who's going to be live on the phone from the States. Now, one of the great things to come out of doing the show Planet X is that we've met over the months that we've been doing it, some fabulously knowledgeable local researchers and bloggers and filmmakers and speakers, and we've decided to get some of them in over the next coming weeks and months to call it, well, the idea we've come up with is Mersey Minds.
Yeah, the voice on the street.
Yeah.
Do you know what? There's a lot of critical information comes from that, you know?
Yeah.
Really good.
And one of our first, in fact, the first Mersey Mind is a friend of the show and a great local researcher, David Lloyd. Welcome to Planet X.
Good evening, everybody. Jackie, Steve, Neil.
Now, you are a bit of a chemtrail anorak. I don't know whether that's the right word to say, because he's got so much research that he's done on this, haven't you?
Yes and no. It's a very, very interesting subject, and it's a many-faceted subject. And how I got first into the subject is I watched a YouTube video with Vessi Ventura. He was a senator in America, but he ended up going to the HARP facility in Gacona, and apparently they had this facility that was secret, and he wouldn't let him in, even though he was a senator at the time. And the interesting point was that this facility was to excite the particles in the atmosphere, and they needed certain things to aid that, and these chemtrails are part of it, you see.
So how long ago was this that you came across the whole chemtrail thing?
About 2 years ago. And it's an array field of 360 aerials, and when you switch it on, it can actually lift portions of the ionosphere.
This is HARP.
This is HARP, the High Aerial Research Program, and within the film that they were showing, it was conspiracy theory with Jesse Ventura. In the film that they were showing, they also talked to a guy who used to talk to online called Jerry E. Smith, who wrote a book about it. There's another book by Nick Begich called Angels, something about angels. Angels don't play this harp. That was
Angels don't play this harp. Yeah, that's very well known.
Yeah. So that's how I got into it. And then I put chemtrails in on YouTube, and I found that there was literally tens of thousands. So I decided to walk outside in the back garden. And sure enough, there they are. There's the trails in the sky. I could not believe it.
You've got to know what you're looking for, though.
Yeah,
you know, and a lot of people don't even look up these days, to tell you the truth. But you have got to learn what you're looking for, but they're there.
It's got to the stage now where I went for a meal with my mum, and we sat in St George's Park, behind St George's Hall, if it's called St George's Park. And I said, see that, Mum? That's a natural cloud. And see these lines here in the sky. And he started to get wider and wider until it actually fill the sky. So what should be a nice, normal, clear afternoon, it could be a lovely sunny morning, but once you see the planes come across, within an hour, it's a whiteout.
Listen, all our listeners out there clearly should know for themselves. Let's just all we're going to ask is just think back to 20, 30 years ago when we were out and we had holidays, the weather was 80s and 90s, it was blue skies. Where's it gone? We don't have that now.
Because you'd have the normal contrail and they'd disappear, wouldn't they?
That's right.
But now they're lingering.
You can guarantee when it's a sunny morning, by the afternoon, you'll need an umbrella 9 times out of 10. It'll be a grey afternoon.
And that's just within our time. That's just within 30 years, and that's nothing. I mean, if we were talking a geological event that was taking place on a global scale, then it shouldn't happen within 30 years. It's just too fast. So there's obviously something, responsible for it.
And when do they start these spraying? Because some people say it starts very early in the morning and goes right through to the evening.
Well, I go to the swimming baths about 7 o'clock in the morning, and we've seen them 4 abreast. It's unbelievable. Didn't have a camera on me at the time. Within 30 seconds of each other, a parallel spraying. And I've done a couple of clips myself on YouTube, and it's just unbelievable. You can count 100 lines in the sky. And they're all on different flight paths.
And these are coming from civilian aircraft.
They come from up the Mersey. Down the Mersey. They use the Mersey as a marker. And you've actually seen them switch the spray on and switch the spray off. And then they'll be... Now, you won't see them every single day because they seem to have a grid pattern where they do different... Maybe Warrington one day and somewhere else the next day.
Well, we have exactly the same thing over up at Manchester Airport. We have exactly the same sort of thing. But again, starting early in the morning. And usually a few 4 or 5 hours later...
Now, are these special planes or are these commercial airlines or is it a combination of the two?
Well, it's in America. It's been defined a company called Evergreen have provided the planes, but also there's private planes and military planes, and they're unmarked.
I think they've all had a stab at it, haven't they? Really? I mean, we've got the civilian aircraft that we do tend to see, don't we?
If you think how big the operation is, it's generally known as global dimming. What they're doing, they're actually cutting sunlight. Supposedly to reflect that these particles of aluminium and barium is supposed to reflect the sun back into space, but they're actually causing global warming by keeping the heat in that's already here.
It is. That's probably the effect of it. But there are some theories behind the reasons why they might be doing that.
But it turns out I've done a little bit of research in this. Evergreen also provides aluminium as well. They deal with aluminium. And I was reading a story the other day, actually, about one of the biggest firms that you've probably never heard of, called Glencore. They're a giant commodity dealer, and they also deal with derivatives. And he'd done a deal with Xtra. So many shares towards Xtra. 50 billion we're talking about.
So 50 billion?
50 billion.
Oh, crikey.
And guess who was brokering the deal? Tony Blair.
Oh, dear.
It turns out that at the end of the month, around about the 23rd, they'll know for sure whether it's going to go through. They're going to put it through to the people, you know, the shareholders to take it. It's 305 point shares.
The plot thickens.
It does. There's a man you can trust with that lovely little grin of his. Good old Tony.
One of the main points about it is it says that 8 out of 10 things that you've got in a home, whether it's made of metal, copper, lead, it goes through Glencore. They've got more ships than the British, you know, the UK Royal Navy, apparently.
Okay, so let's dig a little bit deeper. So we've kind of established that a chemtrail is different to the normal vapour of a contrail that used to come out of airlines, commercial airlines. Let's ask the obvious question. Why are they doing this?
Well, it's as I said, it's a many-headed hydra. There's supposedly weather modification, whether you're trying to induce or suppress rain. There's military aspects. There's financial aspects.
There's a number of theories, isn't there?
Oh, I would call it theories, to be honest. I actually think...
Number of reasons.
Reasons, that's the way I'm
A number of reasons why they do it.
But the definition of geoengineering is the deliberate modification of a planet's environment by the addition or subtraction of energy or resources on a massive scale. Now, let me just let you know, this, folks, that this is worldwide. It is
worldwide.
On a massive scale. It's
and just as I was mentioning earlier, it was about 8 years ago, I came across a document which was released from the good German government saying that it was now illegal over there to alter the weather. Now, if it's illegal over there, they obviously can do it. And this was 8 years ago, so taking into consideration, it's happening on a global scale, weather alteration.
They've been spraying in earnest since about 1996, 97, but the spraying goes back years. They were doing experiments in the 1960s up to 1979.
They were, I remember them spreading radiation on a small town, actually.
Yeah,
they even got away with that, didn't they?
Zinc, cadmium sulfate or something. And all different sorts of bacteria. But only for the tenacity of MP Norman Baker did it come to light, because successive governments have tried to cover up this information.
Yeah.
They don't want you to know. They want you to pay for it, but they don't want you to know what the results are.
I know that there's a Swedish official who has now come out, and I'm just looking for the name here.
Pernilla Hagberg.
That's the one from the Green Party in Sweden. Now, she's one of the first MPs, or Europe MPs, to come out and raise the debate about chemtrails.
This is a big step to awareness, because the only other person I know of celebrity status is Scott Stevens in America, who was a weatherman for 20 years. And he finally realised that the weather he was putting out on the TV wasn't natural. It was programmed weather. They were making the weather. So he said, I'm only reporting what the corporations.
This is not the first time we heard about this, because when we had a gentleman in talking about the 9/11 and regarding the movements of hurricanes,
that's right,
you know, which didn't seem to be natural, natural events, you know.
So yeah, he's a very interesting guy. He's got his own website called Weather Wars, if you have a look online, and he goes into it deeply, makes his own videos. But Pernilla Hagberg is a massive step for awareness for everybody to find out, because she is the first actual MP in Sweden to actually come out and say that the Americans, the CIA and the NSA are spraying over their population without any agreements of any sort, and hopefully more things will come of it, you know.
And of course, there's got to be some sort of major reason, and you know, something advantageous if it's a global thing, because we've got all these different countries. And now, as you know, a lot of the subjects that we cover, not all countries agree on the matter. You know, some may say, "Oh, I'm not. I mean, I'm going to release information, and we're not." But we've got the whole world in on this somehow. So it's got to be significantly important.
There's definitely agreements been made behind closed doors, and it's a worldwide agreement. But there's also another thing called open skies policy, where America and Russia can fly anywhere in the world over different countries' land, and maybe they're using this as well. I don't know. It's a strange one, but as I say, there's many aspects to it, and one of the aspects is actually Star Wars. If I can find
I've heard about this.
Well, while you look for that, let's play another clip from the film, What in the World Are They Spraying? And again, this looks at the agenda behind why are they spraying.
They're proceeding because they have an agenda that's separate from trying to thwart this crisis of global warming. You know, there's obviously several other objectives, whether it's depopulation, control, weapons aspects, communications aspects, all kinds of things, wild cards that we know nothing about. We don't really know, and I'm not going to attempt to speculate on exactly what the agendas are, but we can see clearly the agendas are not benefiting mankind.
This is Planet X. I'm Neil Atkinson. We're also joined in the studio by Steve and also Jackie Highway from Phenomena magazine, and one of our first Mersey Minds local researcher, David Lloyd, who is heavily involved in researching chemtrails, which is the big topic tonight. Now, in that clip there, they were talking about possibly depopulating the world, also the weapons aspect, the control, the communication aspects, the weather, and you've thrown another thing into the hat, really. Another idea,
another Sabo in the works.
Yeah, which is for. When you say Star Wars, we're not talking about the George Lucas film. No. We're talking about things going on above our heads to do with satellites in space.
Yeah, we're talking about the weaponized atmosphere, the combination of chemtrails for creating an atmosphere that will support electromagnetic waves. In essence, particulates make direct energy weapons work better. They spray barium and aluminium, and then using ground-based or space-based weapons, they make a dense plasma.
And it's not the first time we've heard about this, because I came across this type of Star Wars, theories regarding the use of these weapons in UFO footage, which was seen apparently circling Earth's orbit and allegedly being fired upon from locations probably near to Australia.
I've seen
heard that?
Footage.
And you've seen that?
Yeah.
It was also mentioned regarding some of the documentaries and regarding some of the incidents that took place in Iraq, and how some cars seem to be kind of lasered, in a sense of speaking, attacked from the sky.
But that clip you were actually talking about, where you actually see a UFO, it looked like a pulse or beam weapon had been fired.
There was references to masonry weapons, weren't there, some years ago, but it kind of went very quiet. But we've got a very large national security agency facility in Australia, haven't we, Pine Gap?
Yeah.
So maybe they are dealing with things. There was one gentleman who was doing some filming there, said that they were firing some type of green laser up into the atmosphere quite regularly from that location.
But apparently this thing this object, after being fired at half a second later, it made a right angle at something worked out about 250,000 miles an hour away.
It was ridiculous. It was
unbelievable.
But you know how fast those ice particles are.
Yes, I know.
Warp speed ice particles was NASA's explanation. Listen, let's put a hold on it there. We're going to talk to our special guest, Mark McCandish, who is featured in the film What in the World Are They Spraying? And he's got a very interesting background. 30 years in defence and classified projects. Maybe he'll be able to tell us more about chemtrails and the possible use with a Star Wars sort of twist on it. That's all next on Planet X.
This is Planet X. Planet X. On City Talk 105.9. Planet X. The truth is on air. City Talk 105.9.
Welcome back to Planet X. I'm Neil Atkinson. We've also got Steve and Jackie from Phenomena magazine. Our local Mersey Mind for tonight is local researcher David Lloyd, and Dan the Man.
The man's here. Dan's
made it in.
He's made it.
He's made it at last. We've also got on the line live from America, Mark McCandish. Mark, welcome to Planet X.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Great to have you as part of the show. You were featured in the film, and we've played a few clips from What in the World Are They Spraying, and we'll probably go back to the film in just a little while. I think we got the links up on Facebook and on the website, and I think they've just finished a kind of follow-up, if you like, why in the world are they spraying. But we've started the debate about chemtrails, and just before we get into that, just give everybody a little bit of your background, because we were chatting earlier before we came on live, and you've got a fascinating background.
Well, thank you. I spent the better part of 30 years working as a conceptual artist for the defense industry here in the United States, working as an independent contractor for a variety of different aerospace companies and defense contractors. Had an opportunity to see an awful lot of advanced technology and classified weapon systems. And I've also done quite a bit of editorial work for magazines like Popular Science, Discover, and Popular Mechanics magazine. So it's been a pretty exciting career. I've paid a little more attention to the chemtrail situation here in the United States since I moved to Northern California. And beginning around 2001, we began to see a considerable amount of chemtrailing occurring over this part of the country.
Now, we've talked during the start of the show about the speculation, the agenda, what's behind it. Is it depopularization? Is it weapons? Is it communications? Is it weather? Is it controlling the climate? What's your take on it?
Well, I would say probably all of the above. There is a fair amount of evidence that not only can chemtrails and the coordinated use of other systems such as the HAARP array in Gakona, Alaska, can be used to not only influence and control the path of the jet stream, but it can also be used to create powerful low-pressure systems, augment the severity of hurricanes, but it can also be used to reflect sunlight, protect the atmosphere from a lot of the heat coming from the sun, providing a kind of reflective mirror-like surface in the upper atmosphere that reflects away a lot of the heat. But it can also be used to suppress the immune system. For example, there was a U.S. Air Force study conducted between 1993 and 2001 where they showed conclusively that aluminum oxide nanoparticles can, in fact, affect the performance of white blood cells in the lungs, which are your first line of defense against respiratory infection. So there's a lot of things that can be brought into play with this particular kind of technology, and some of it good and some of it bad.
I'm going to play a clip from the film, and this is highlighting the stats, the statistics, if you like. By the way, for our English listeners, aluminum is aluminium. It kind of gets lost in translation. Aluminium, like your vitamins. But yeah, it's aluminium, and this is quite incredible. The statistics of how much aluminium or aluminum is actually being sprayed throughout the atmosphere. Have a listen to this.
You can see these are parts per million. They sent this to me, and I just found this to be extremely interesting because we should have like 2 parts per million of aluminum in our air. And this is saying that there's 39,000 parts of aluminum. That's astronomical. Barium is high. I mean, these are way off the charts of what people should be breathing or what's coming down on them. And, you know, if people wonder why their health is deteriorating, why they're having to go to emergency rooms, why they can't breathe, you know, why they're getting Alzheimer's, this has been planned.
Now, Mark, if those statistics are correct, if that research is correct, that's unbelievable. 2 parts per million. But really, it's coming out at 39,000 parts per million?
Yes, that's right. And in fact, Mount Shasta, which is about 75 miles north of here, has snowmelt water coming off of the glacier on the top of the volcano now that is so toxic that it's actually harmful to drink the water coming off of the mountain. A lot of this is from the chemtrailing and the fallout that results because eventually the material settles out of the atmosphere. But it's also being used as a part of a nucleation process for creating what is called moisture sequestration. Up until probably about 3 or 4 months ago, we saw a tremendous amount of spraying directly over California. But a lot of that spraying has now been pushed offshore into the northern Pacific and along the California coastline, all of which can be seen on the internet through some of the weather satellites and the National Oceanographic, and then let's see, what is it? NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. They have some satellites that actually cover this, and if you can get the live feed that hasn't been edited, you can see an awful lot of the chemtrailing that's occurring offshore right now. This process has a tendency to cause the moisture to stick to these little tiny particles of aluminum oxide, and it carries it further inland. So right now we're seeing a drought all along the west coast in the western United States. And then with the proper amount of stimulation from a system like HAARP, the system that's up in Gakona, Alaska, you can irradiate these particles, cause them to heat up, which causes the air mass that they are sitting inside of to basically rise through convection to a higher altitude where the temperatures are much colder. And then, of course, the moisture all condenses into a low-pressure system and falls to the earth as rain. So you see a lot of flooding in the central United States where you didn't see these kinds of things before.
You're listening to Planet X. Our special guest on the line from the States is Mark McCandish, who features in the film What in the World Are They Spraying? We've also got our local researcher, our Mersey Mind, in tonight, who is David Lloyd, who has done a lot of local research on chemtrails. I think David's got a question for you, Mark.
Yeah, Mark. Here in the UK, we have it's been said in newspapers on the BBC that rickets and Alzheimer's at an all-time high in the UK. Rickets because of lack of vitamin D from the sun. It's said that in some parts of the world, it's 20% less sunlight reaching the Earth's surface than what there used to be. What's it like in America? Are they having the same problems with rickets and Alzheimer's? Because Alzheimer's is really big. People are getting sick. It's causing kidney and liver defects, and people are starting to struggle to breathe.
Yes, well, we're seeing those same kinds of problems over here in the United States. In fact, the individual who I'm actually here in replacement of, Dane Wigington, used to spend a lot of time working for several of the major solar power companies in the United States. I think at one point he worked for Bechtel Corporation as well. He has a house on 2,000 acres that is out in the middle of the wilderness, and he's reported nearly a 40% drop in the amount of electrical power that he's getting from his solar arrays. In fact, his house is entirely powered by a solar photovoltaic system. So he's noticed a dramatic drop in the amount of sunlight, and of course there have been recent studies that have shown that a reduction in vitamin D3 can lead to certain kinds of mental health issues, depression, suicidal thoughts, and things of this nature. So you can see how not only would this contribute to things like Alzheimer's and various other mental health issues, but it also contributes to poor metabolism and the other things that are associated with the proper amount of vitamin D3 in your system.
But it's said that these heavy metals over time build up in your body and you can't really get rid of them, like mercury and fish. This is right, isn't it? Unless you take colloidal silver or chelate or something to try and get rid of these heavy metals.
Well, I actually use a detoxifying agent called Zeoforce. It's kind of a zeolite material. There's also a kind of food-grade organic version of bentonite clay, which coincidentally is the same kind of material that's used in kitty litter for their litter boxes. It has a very highly absorbent nature. In fact, I've been told it can absorb up to 15 times its weight in water. So yeah, there are things that you can do, and I think that flushing the system with plenty of water is probably good as well.
Okay, listen, we've got loads of questions to get in. I'm conscious of the news coming up very soon, so hopefully you'll hang on the line for that while that's on. But Dan, you want to get in quick as well?
Yeah, while we're on this topic, I think it's interesting that we're focusing in on the connections between chemtrails and the effects in a kind of environmental way on human beings. I recall, I think I mentioned it on the show a few weeks back, there was a discussion at the National Association of Coloured People, with Dick Gregory, who was a civil rights activist and a stand-up comedian, and he had a big rant on the show about chemtrails and manganese in particular. Manganese is a heavy metal. Firstly, what are your thoughts on manganese being part of the chemtrails? And secondly, his association with the effects of chemtrails on what he was basically blaming chemtrails for the kind of violence and the social economic malaise in black society in America because of the heavy metal concentration in chemtrails. I mean, he was a bit of a rant, but it was a really interesting statement that he linked those two together. And, you mentioned just then the links with suicide rates and things like that and the effects on the human psyche. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's entirely possible. In this part of the country where I'm at, we have not seen higher levels of manganese by any means. There are a variety of materials that are being used. There's even been some discussion in the northeastern United States of sulfur showing up in higher levels. So it may be a regionally specific type of dispensing of these different kinds of materials. But as far as the effects that it might have on particular segments of the population or parts of the black population, it's really hard to say. I know, for example, that the manufacturing process for producing these nanoparticles, all of which are uniform in size, can go all the way down to something like 40 nanometers across, which is, imagine you have a red blood cell that's the size of Volkswagen. You can put, a number of these particles around this particular red blood cell, which would look like a bunch of baseballs stacked around a Volkswagen. It's, that's how small these things are if you were to scale it up. So you can see that these things can not only be absorbed into the system, but can also have an effect on the chemical processes that occur inside the body. If you have conductive materials like copper or manganese or aluminium, as you were saying, obviously these are going to play some kind of a role in the function of the different organs in the body.
Mark, I'm going to have to wrap it up there for a second because we've got the news, but hopefully you'll hang on the line and we'll come straight back with more on chemtrails. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, please do.
Fascinating.
Facebook or text us, and we'll get through some more of your questions next on Planet X.
This is Planet X on City Talk 105.9. The radio show that officially does not exist. This is Planet X. Planet X on City Talk 105.9.
This is inevitably military or something going on. The government, the Air Force, they send out what's known as CHEP, and it's a way to experiment with the radar systems. And when you see this kind of a pattern like this, you can rest assured there's something going on. They're actually little bitty magnetic and little bitty strips of, whether it's aluminum, they change it, but what happens is the radar deflects off of all these little pieces.
And the number one reason you should visit New Zealand.
We have chemtrails too, just like America.
There is a growing citizens movement demanding an explanation of chemtrails.
And I talked to my NSA buddies at Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base in Buckley, where I was actually their doctor taking care of the pilots flying and spraying the chemtrails. So I know it's real. If anybody says it's not real, they're full of it.
To Planet X. Tonight we're talking chemtrails. As always, we're joined by our Planet experts, Jackie and Steve from Phenomena Magazine, Dan the Man's in, and one of our first local Mersey minds is also joining us, local researcher David Lloyd, and live from the States and on the line is Mark McCandish, who featured in the film What in the World Are They Spraying? Mark, welcome back to the show. We've got lots of questions that are coming in via Facebook and on the forums. And can I just say, by the way, Dan, as well, some great photographs. So thanks to everyone who's putting some great local photos on of chemtrails. Do you want to get started on some questions for Mark?
That's right, yeah. First of all, we've got Helen on the forum, or Hellcat, as she's called, and she's saying, do you think that some of the UK chemtrails are drones, or the planes that fly them are drones?
No, I seriously doubt that they are. Most of the aircraft that I've observed personally are everything from Boeing 737-800s all the way up to some of the Airbus 300 and higher numbered four-engine airliners. Most of the aircraft that I've seen are, they look like Boeing manufacture commercial carriers. I've only actually seen one military aircraft, which was a KC-135, on one occasion spraying a chemtrail, but all the others they look like commercial airliners.
So how do you think these chemicals are being installed in these planes, if it's not a kind of military or kind of secret kind of agenda in that sense, if it's just commercial airliners that are responsible?
Well, there's a number of things that I've come across on the internet. I think anybody who's spent any time searching has seen all the different photographs of these alleged chemtrail spraying bits of equipment that are placed in the lower cargo hold of some of these aircraft. There have been some allegations that the systems have been integrated into the restroom part of the sewage recovery part of the aircraft, so that when these things are serviced, it can be serviced as part of the removal of some of that material. But I've actually come across a scientific paper that suggests that these aluminium oxide nanoparticles could actually be suspended right in the fuel itself. Now, I know that sounds kind of strange, but when you consider how small the particles are, there's really no problem with abrasion of the turbine blades of the engines. But as it happens, that when you combine aluminium oxide nanoparticles with JP4, JP5, JP7, and other kinds of jet propellants, it actually enhances the combustion reaction by releasing a tremendous amount of oxygen during combustion. And so what happens is you find that these aircraft are not able to fly more efficiently and get longer range and better fuel economy, but they can also fly to much higher altitudes by virtue of the fact that even though you're flying to an altitude where there's a lower oxygen content in the atmosphere, you're literally carrying your oxygen supply right in the fuel, albeit inertly, with the fuel itself. So the aircraft can still perform. It can perform at higher altitudes as long as the control surfaces of the aircraft are still able to maintain effective control of the aircraft. But this is one of the reasons why some of the chemtrails may actually appear to be coming from the engine exhaust itself. It may be something that they're actually putting into the fuel. In one study I found they were putting 40% by weight nanoparticles of aluminium oxide.
Any more questions, Sam?
Yeah, we've got Joseph on the Facebook. He's asking a question that can go out to all of the experts here. He's saying, who is funding the chemtrails and why? Well, first of all,
this is a good question. One of the documents that I came across was something that was published by the United States government, part of something called the Intergovernmental Program for the Study of Climate Change. And they were advocating right in this program the use of aerosols for climate change mitigation. Namely to make the atmosphere itself more reflective. So that program, last time I checked, had several billions of dollars being pumped into it by the federal government.
One thing I wanted to jump in on, and we touched on it briefly at the start of the show, is if this is indeed a worldwide phenomena, how do you get the whole world, doing this and sort of participating, if you like, because surely some governments don't get on with other governments.
Well, that's true. We have noticed, based on some of the satellite photography, that there are certain areas of the world where there is no spraying going on, and two of those areas seem to be China and North Korea. But everywhere else, there seems to be quite a bit of it going on, even in Russia. So, it seems to me that there seemed to be a kind of seasonal displacement of the aerosol campaign. That is to say that during the wintertime you see less of it in the northern hemisphere, and when the winter is occurring in the southern hemisphere, you see less of it down there. So it may be that this is specifically directed at trying to reflect some of the sun's heat away from the atmosphere, due largely to the problems with the polar ice caps melting down. We're seeing something on the order of 130,000 square kilometers of ice disappearing each day during the summertime in the northern hemisphere. We've even got what appears to be the reopening of the Northwest Passage around the North American continent now. So it's obvious that there is something seriously taking place, and I think that maybe this is one of the few times when the governments of different parts of the world are coming together, realizing that they have a common cause.
There is, just touching on the China question, not the China question, but the fact that you mentioned China was one of the few countries that hasn't been sprayed. There is, and again, it could be just a big conspiracy theory, but there are rumours on the internet that China is being kind of groomed to be the next America. Have you heard of this?
Well, I recently came across a video. It was a presentation by one of the top executives for General Motors that was saying that they had serious plans already in the works for building new production facilities in China, and that they were looking to China as being the future of their production for new automobiles, which I found really disturbing. But when you consider that you can acquire labor in China much more cheaply than you can here in the United States, and I've actually been through some of the General Motors automobile production facilities here in California a number of years ago, and they were paying some of the union members there astronomical amounts of money for doing basically just spot welding, all of which has been automated now. But it does cause some concern.
Okay, let's get back to some of the other questions now. Dan's got one, and some of our other experts are chomping at the bit to get in there, so who wants to go next?
Yeah, just interesting that we're still, while we're on the who is doing this kind of topic, I read an interesting article today regarding, when we were talking, I heard you talking earlier about what is in the public domain regarding what chemtrails might possibly be, is the reflective aerosols to combat global warming. Now, this is fairly kind of openly discussed, and there's an interesting story that there's a test that's going to be going ahead in Mexico City by a guy called David Keith, or and his institute that's doing it, and he's funded by Bill Gates. Right. Now, there you go. Now, if we're going to talk about kind of geoengineering, as this is called, and we're looking at the kind of the stuff that's being emitted, and that is being emitted out there, there's a kind of money trail there. What do the guys think about that?
Well, in the film What in the World Are They Spraying, the meeting was in San Diego, and Dane Wigington actually asked David Keith of University of Calgary what the effect would be of spraying 20 million tonnes of aluminium, nano-sized particles. Would they have any effect? And he said at that time that they didn't know what the long-term effect would be. But he said it was going to be very cheap to spray this aluminium because it was a lot cheaper, and the way it spreads out is supposed to be 16 times better. But he didn't get a clear answer off him, and David Keith said it's not really a moral issue. It's more like free riding on our grandkids, which I thought was a terrible thing to say.
And also a very telling thing about what the motivations might be.
By the way, the way he was talking about proposals, when we all know it's been going on for at least 15, 16, 17 years.
Mark, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, I do. Well, one of the things we know, Francis Mangels, who is a gentleman living up in Mount Shasta, about 70 miles north of me here, is a friend of mine. He was also in the film. He's done soil analysis all over Northern California, and we're finding a dramatic rise in the alkalinity of the soil. This is one of the byproducts of all the aluminum that's being dropped on us from the sky. This, of course, affects the ability of plants to absorb nutrients from the soil. It also gets into the plants because the particles are so small, they can be basically drawn in through the root systems of these plants. The other problem that we're finding is that Aluminium oxide actually is an accelerant. It's one of the components that's used in super thermite or thermate explosives, because when it's involved in combustion, it releases a tremendous amount of oxygen into the reaction. It dramatically raises the heat of the reaction. This is one of the reasons why it's used in controlled demolition of buildings, is because it produces a sudden increase in temperature into the thousands of degrees. So the problem is that when you have aluminium oxide nanoparticles in the air, you've also raised the electrostatic potential and conductivity of the air. So when a low-pressure system is formed using these materials in conjunction with HARP, you wind up with so many lightning strikes. I mean, it looks like something from an old Vincent Price movie. I mean, one right after the other. We had one storm that came through last fall that produced over 8,500 lightning strikes in just a matter of a few hours. We had over 1,000 forest fires, some of which grew into one another. But of course, when you have this much aluminum oxide in the forest, it's an incendiary. I mean, we have fires that are burning at temperatures beyond anything that the firefighters have seen before. I've spoken to some of them, and they all say that they felt that it was just remarkable how difficult it was to suppress these fires. And then, of course, there's an added burden on the state government, because most of the cost for suppressing these fires is borne by the state of California and other states like this. One fire alone just last year cost over $25 million to suppress, and it took weeks to do so. So you can see that there are a lot of different things that are going on that are happening as a negative consequence of this kind of activity. The question is whether or not it's really worth it. And, of course, the other thing that's mentioned in the movie, Why in the World Are They Spraying, is the fact that a lot of this, the impact that the aluminium oxide nanoparticles have on the soil is that it's having a negative impact on the ability to grow many different kinds of crops. And so as a result, you have companies like Monsanto that are now creating genetically modified crops that will thrive in aluminum-rich soil. So if you have, say, one particular corporation that's responsible or working cooperatively with someone like Monsanto and spraying these materials which are killing the crops, Monsanto has a ready-made solution. And, of course, by doing this, you can then corner the market and limit, the kinds of crops that are being grown, which is not necessarily a good thing, because when you have a reduction in genetic diversity in the crops, that means that if something goes wrong, if these crops do have some kind of vulnerability down the road, it also means that you could have a dramatic drop in the production of food at some point down the road if conditions change.
I'm going to take a break there. Some interesting points that Mark has raised there, and I think it's G. Edward Griffin, the author who's also featured in the film. He makes an interesting quote. I know you've seen the film, haven't you, David? And he says, just follow the dollar. Follow the dollar, follow the money, and that's where you'll get a lot of the answers. And just, I don't know whether I dreamt this or I read this, but I'm pretty sure I saw somewhere on either Facebook or on the internet. Again, it might have just been made up, but it made me laugh that Monsanto, at the local cafeteria or canteen, they've banned all GM foods. Which I thought that was, I don't know whether that was a joke or whether that was real, but I thought it was quite interesting. Listen, we're talking chemtrails. It is Planet X. We're back with Mark McCandish in just a little while. Also, we're going to try, if we get time, because we're short on time, but we'll try and get ALIX Longman, who again is a friend of yours, David, and is responsible for a great website, chemtrailsprojectuk.com. So we'll try and speak to ALIX in just a little while. And we'll try and get on more of your questions. If you'd like to Facebook us, Dan is standing by to accept you and take your questions, or you can text talk and then a question to 61025. Back with more next on Planet X.
Planet X. The truth is on air. City Talk 105.9. X marks the spot. This is Planet X on City Talk 105.9.
Welcome back to Planet X. We're talking chemtrails tonight, and it's like somebody's come into the studio and opened a bag of guests. They're everywhere. Yeah. We've got the Planet experts, Dan, Jackie, and Steve from Phenomena Magazine. We've got our Mersey Mine tonight, which is a new thing that we're going to start. And Dan, it was one that you sort of came up with, having the Mersey Mines in.
Yeah, it was just inspired by when we did the Planet X talk, and I met so many people at the Planet X talk who were listening to the show, and they all had something on the go. They were doing a bit of research in this, a bit of research in that, and it just seems to be this wealth of really on-the-ball people in Liverpool so why not exploit them?
Yeah.
And get them on the show.
Yeah. So, over the next few weeks and months while the show is on, we're going to get in local researchers, bloggers, filmmakers and speakers, because as Dan says, there's some good ones out there, like David Lloyd, who specialises in all kinds of things, but is very interested in chemtrails. So Dave's in with us. And we've also got, as well as Mark, we're going to go back to Mark in the States in just a moment, but we're also joined on the line by ALIX Longman, who is one of the people behind ChemtrailsProjectUK.com. Alex, welcome to Planet X.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Now, listen, I don't know whether you've been listening to the show.
Yes, I have.
Oh, great. So I don't have to backtrack, but we've had all kinds of questions, and we're going to go back to Mark in just a little while. But let's, Dan, let's get a couple more questions going, because I'm pretty sure Alex would like to jump in on some of these questions.
Yeah, firstly, in the local area, we got a really interesting comment on the forum by Graham B. He's saying, "Hi guys, interesting listening tonight. I'm not sure what to make of chemtrails. However, as a pilot myself, I hear some really badly researched comments regarding the trails. The Mersey is not a waypoint for aircraft. There is a beacon in Wallasey which forms a series of navigation beacons across the country. There is a high-level airway which crosses Liverpool, where these airways converge, and there is a concentration of trails. It is not done to target one area. When aircraft are seen to switch off their trails then back on again, it is more often due to an inversion layer causing fluctuations of air temperature." So a bit of a critical mind there from a pilot, but we need to get all the viewpoints out there. What does anyone make of that kind of criticism?
I think, well, that's spot on, yeah. I mean, we understand that contrails can, just as much as chemtrails, whatever's trailing up there can obviously change due to, meteorological conditions, because of air pressure. However, what we're actually trying to sort of work out is is there something significantly different between the chemtrail and the contrail, such as if it's expansion and then a cover of the sky, which is certainly significantly different than contrails. What do you think, David?
I think that's a great answer. I mean, it's some places you can actually see where they've in the sky where they've left a circle. They've gone round in a circle.
Yeah, we've actually got a picture on the Facebook of one of those.
At the end of the day, a plane goes from A to B unless it's bad weather. They haven't got the fuel or the time to take diverted tours.
Alex, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, I'd love to. Yes, there are many reasons for this issue, as Mark and David have gone through. One of the things I found out in my research was that air pollution is the biggest killer in the UK. That's a fact. Okay, the statistics you can verify in our link, the directive, which I'll tell you a little bit about, so that people can actually inform themselves of 21 points of evidence that we've included in this to join the dots. This is suppressed from the media, so we put it all into one place so that people can source it, investigate themselves, and share it within their communities. As far as the aviation emissions are concerned being factored into air pollution, I would like to highlight that they are not being factored in. And it is documented that aviation emissions back to World War II during the Blitz caused changes in the temperature. So whether it's nefarious or not, the emissions from planes, and the pilot can listen to this and look it up for himself, that they do cause cirrus. It's aviation emission cirrus cloud. And so this does change the temperature, and it was also documented during 9/11 when they cancelled all the air traffic over the US and the temperature changed.
Yes.
So these are two very crucial times, the Blitz and 9/11. They're irrefutable. Go and look it up, little pilot, okay? Sorry, we're dealing with a lack of whistleblowers from the pilot community, because they are well aware of what's going on, but they seem to be being paid a very good sum to keep doing what they're doing. Anyway,
have we got our pilot's name, by the way?
Just Graham, it was.
Oh, poor old Graham. Graham, if you want to get on the phone, and let's have a heated debate.
Before. Yeah.
Okay. Alex, hang on there. I want to play another clip on the show, because we've talked about a lot of aluminium being pumped out, or aluminum, if you're an American, in these chemtrails. This is a clip from Dr. Deagle, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, PhD. Yeah, let's have a listen to what he thinks is in the actual spraying process.
And chemtrails, by the way, barium salts are in chemtrails. They are 10,000 times more toxic to your nervous system than lead. They contain mycobacteria, viruses, Pseudomonas florensis bacteria, human plasma. Wonder what human plasma is doing in chemtrails. And this is not by conjecture. I did a lot of research before I'd ever say this. But these chemtrails are nasty. And there's 3 reasons for chemtrails. The first is and I talked to my NSA buddies at Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base, and Buckley, where I was actually their doctor taking care of the pilots flying and spraying the chemtrails. So I know it's real. If anybody says it's not real, they're full of it. Okay? Because I'm a whistleblower. On the inside, it's not open for discussion. And my NSA buddies told me, 95% of them told me, they were up there trying to spray to reflect the sun out to stop global warming. So most of them are dumb enough to believe that garbage.
Okay, there's a clip from Dr. Deagle. Mark, let's go back to you. You familiar with Dr. Deagle's work?
No, unfortunately I'm not, but it sounds like he's on top of the situation, doesn't it?
Okay, Alex, what about you?
Yes, I am familiar with Bill Deagle's work. It's excellent. And hello, Mark.
Nice to meet you, Alex.
Nice to meet you, Mark. Brilliant work that Mark does and has helped incredibly to be contributing to the research. The point I really want to bring up that is omitted in many of these conversations, it's point of research, it's point of fact, it's included in the directive. Aviation emissions are not regulated. Now, if your car was blowing out of the exhaust pipe, what we see daily over our skies, it wouldn't get an MOT. In the UK, that means it wouldn't pass a roadworthy. The aviation industry has got a very strong connection with the money behind this to make sure that they are not held accountable for what they are emitting. So that is also included in the directive. We have included the fact that it's weaponized weather. We've included the patents. We've included an independent UK lab rainwater test, which reveals the high levels of heavy metal toxicity. We've included the deliberate stigmatization of the terminology so that people, when they do bring up the term chemtrails, even though Dennis Kanichich, the congressman in the United States, actually used it in an act to try and ban geoengineering, people are ridiculed for using the term. Well, the official term is stratospheric aerosol injection, and it's one of the methods of solar radiation management, which is actually being conducted in the air, on the land, and at sea, which Scott Stevens, the meteorologist of 20 years' experience, goes into in rather more detail as well. We have had the government do this before. They've admitted it. They've sprayed the UK population. The US government have admitted they've sprayed the US population. So this is not inconceivable that it's actually going on now. The global warming aspect is one of the most infuriating diatribes of rhetoric going on in the mainstream media, where we have political science arguing with natural, serious science, and yet neither of them are acknowledging the geoengineering, which is blatantly going on in our skies. So one can only assume the political science is paid off and the serious science is being threatened to stay quiet. So we will be exposing this in our first presentation in Gloucestershire this Friday, where we're showing both what and why in the world are they spraying, and having a presentation of the directive, which Olga Raffer and myself, who co-admin on Chemtrails Project UK, have put this document together. We did it back in April after thousands of hours of research and really got the skeleton of what is going on. We're not saying it's comprehensive and absolutely everything, but waking up a sleepy public to the first port of call of the numerous agendas that are involved in this without turning them off. Because you find that a lot of people they just switch off when you find out how many things this is connected with. The chemtrails is what we're sticking to just to get the awakening happening and dissolve the denial that is within the public, courtesy of the mainstream media. And I think David and Mark would probably agree with how that's been controlled.
Absolutely. Some good points there, Alex. And you say, it's a lot about waking up the public, but also, I think, waking up some of the local MPs and the politicians. There's a great bit at the end of the film, What in the World Are They Spraying?, where they sort of harangue and harass some of the local US politicians. And to me, Mark, I was talking to you earlier before we came on air about it, because it looks like they're either very naive, some of the politicians, or they just blatantly don't want to talk about it.
Well, I I think they're scared to death of the topic myself. I mean, because if you go into the United States statutes under United States Code Title 50, subsection 30, I believe it is, subsection 1512, where it addresses the issue of the dispensing of chemical and biological weapons. This addressed both dispensing of these kinds of things both internationally and over U.S. territory. And under Section 1512, there are a number of exceptions. But in order for those exceptions to be allowed over U.S. territory, that is the release of chemical or biological agents over U.S. populated areas, there first has to be a directive from the president, so the president has to know. There also has to be a disclosure from the head of Health and Human Services, and a notice has to go out in advance to each and every one of the states in the Union and to the governor of those states, notifying them in advance that these spraying operations will occur. Now, we know, for example, that aluminum oxide, barium, and strontium all have hazardous materials data sheets that have been produced by the Occupational Safety and Hazards Administration. So we know that these materials are unhealthy, and we know under the International Convention on Chemical Weapons, CWC, that any kind of material that's stockpiled for the purpose of spraying over populated areas is considered to be a chemical weapon by definition. So the fact that these things are being sprayed, the fact that there must be a paper trail, just as a matter of policy, means that someone somewhere knows, and this is why I believe they refuse to answer any questions, because they do know and because they are scared of the liability issues that are involved. But not only that, but we have what is called the Freedom of Information Act here in the United States. And so far, I can't say that I've seen anyone that's actually used that to try and get to the bottom of who knows and when they knew it.
Alex, we mentioned earlier on the show that one of the first European MPs, at least, was the Swedish Green Party leader, Pernilla Hagberg, I think her name is, who's actually come out and questioned this. What's been your response when you've spoken to local UK MPs?
Thus far, we've had a smattering of people sending us in replies with just their own inquiry. Thus far as challenging MPs with the directive, they've become scared because it's a watertight document and they haven't been able to debunk it. What we've had back just from a couple of MPs is that they're passing it up the ranks, so they're pushing it to one territory. So we're trying to get the UK population to actually send it en masse.
And you do have a draft letter, don't you, on your website?
Well, there is an accompanying draft letter that you can add to the directive. The directive is turning it around from what Mark has said the power play has been, which is presidents issue directives to the population. We're turning it around. This is a directive from the public to the powers that be. This has got to stop, and we know it's going on. And but we are working on getting the denial dissolved within the public because they are scared, and it's understandable. The economy's collapsing, all sorts of things going. People are very ill with this, and but the more they understand about how it's affecting their health, the more they can pull away from the big pharma medical solutions that they're looking for, which aren't giving them any solutions, and steer them back to some natural solutions that Mark was mentioning earlier. Because people's health is the first port of call, and of course that is going to affect their mental faculties to be able to appreciate what on earth is being done to them.
Alex, we've got to take a break there, but we will, towards the end of the show, give out all the details for all the websites that you need. But it's a great website as well, chemtrailsprojectuk.com, but we'll get that on the Facebook. Back in a mo with more on the chemtrails.
Planet X. The truth is on air. City Talk 105.9. The radio show that officially does not exist. This is Planet X. Planet X on City Talk 105.9.
It's been a busy one tonight. Chemtrails is the topic. I'm Neil Atkinson. We've got our Planet experts in the studio. We've got Steve, Jackie, and Dan the Man from Phenomena Magazine. Also, local researcher Dave Lloyd. And on the phone, ALIX Longman from ChemtrailsProjectUK.com and Mark McCandish as well. Listen, we've literally got about 6 minutes to wrap up and conclude chemtrails. but we've got a few questions, including, Alex, you'll be pleased to know that our pilot friend Graham has replied to you. But I don't want to get too bogged down with a heated debate because we've only got a few minutes, but maybe one for a future programme. But you want to throw a few things in, don't you, Dan?
We've got a question here on the forum from Evmo355, and she's asking, can you please ask about the gang stalking bio APIs in the chemtrails? Now, I'll confess that I don't know what that is. Is there any clues here?
Well, I mean, obviously, you can start checking into sort of modern warfare regarding frequencies, as well as low frequency and high frequency alteration.
Make a point.
Yeah.
At the London Olympics, it was publicly announced that they were using sound frequencies for crowd control.
Yes. It was the same thing took place during an American president. President Bush was going through, I think it was New York, and they had those sonic ears placed out on the street during just for crowd control, just in case.
So this stuff is very real.
It is very real, and that information is available. If you look around, they are using low and high frequency to cause, in some cases, it can cause psychological conditions as well.
Does that fit into the chemtrails anyway that you can see?
It doesn't really fit in. It could fit in with the HARP type sort of thing, because
it does fit in with the chemtrails because of the metallic particulates that it's spraying, which are highly conductive, and they can be triggered by the EMF frequencies.
Apparently, our air is 3 times more conductive now than it ever used to be.
Hence the more storms. Yeah.
Okay, I've got a quick question I want to throw at Mark. Mark, we touched on all the different types, the speculation, the agenda behind chemtrails, depopulation, weapons, communication, weather, climate. But you've got an interesting theory on the possible effects of anti-gravity vehicles. Do you want to share that one with us while we've got a couple of minutes?
Well, up here in Northern California, we see a tremendous amount of UFO activity. I live not too far from Beale Air Force Base, which was the hub of operations for a lot of the strategic reconnaissance that was done by the United States Air Force during the Cold War. We see an awful lot of what appear to be advanced technology aircraft of some kind, and they appear to be using something other than aerodynamic flight to get around, something like anti-gravity or field propulsion. These particular craft, when they're in operation during the daytime, are self-luminous. They glow like a light bulb. And when they operate at night, they're very easy to spot. They can travel at tremendous velocities, make incredible accelerations, making right-angle turns at speeds well over 12 to 15,000 miles per hour without producing a sonic boom, all of which is content for another radio program. But what I found is that there appear to be certain times during the week when these flight operations seem to be more frequent, and that also seems to coincide with when we see more chemtrailing occurring, usually like Sunday night into Monday morning, which would normally be the beginning of a work week if you're in a military situation as a pilot. Also Thursday night to Friday morning. So these are times of the week when we see chemtrailing, which could not be explained in any other kind of meteorological context. And so having personally seen these vehicles on more occasions than I can account, and seeing what appears to be a coordinated effort with the aerosol spraying, I begin to suspect that there was something going on in that regard. And when you realize that aluminum oxide or aluminium oxide nanoparticles in the air not only reflect the sun's heat and radiation back into space, but they also make it more difficult to observe something in the sky at night using night vision or thermal imaging type camera systems. This might explain one of the other reasons for the use of these kinds of material.
It's another fascinating theory, one that we're going to have to leave there. Mark, thank you so much for stepping in at the last minute and doing a great job. And if you'd like to just give us any more information, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
My email address is markmccandish@gmail.com. My website, which seems to be having some problems, I think it's been hacked again, is www.markmccandish.com.
Brilliant. Let's give it up for Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Nice to meet you, Mark.
Thank you.
And Alex, just before we wrap up, give us some websites if people want to research this more.
Absolutely. There are copious websites out there. If people are interested in just going to one document to get started, please come to Chemtrails Project UK. There is a website. We're also on Facebook, and you can download the directive, which has 21 points of evidence citing all the facts of this operation. And we also have a petition, the United Atmospheric Preservation Act, which we've adapted into a UK version, but the original American we also offer, written by Michael Castle.
Alex, I'm going to have to wrap you up there. We've got the news coming up very soon. Thank you, and we will get all that information on our website as well. Thanks, Alex Longman.
Thank you very much.
Fascinating subject. Thanks to all the gang in the studio as well. In conclusion, it looks like chemtrails are real, and it looks like they're made of a lot of aluminium. All we can do is keep taking the pictures, keep talking about it, keep asking the questions until the majority wake up to the fact that there's something being sprayed into our atmosphere without our knowledge. That doesn't sound good to me. I don't know about you.
Watching the skies.
Yeah. This is Planet X, and let's look ahead to next week's show. Now, next week we return to the UFO subject. We've covered it quite a few times from various angles with experts from all over the globe, but it's always nice to get a local perspective, and we do just that next week with the top UK researcher, Darren Perks, joining us live in the studio. And Darren is on the line right now. Darren, welcome to Planet X.
Hi, Neil. Welcome from Darren Perks. There you go.
Good to have you on. Now, just for the benefit of some of the listeners who might not be familiar with your work, tell us everything we need to know about you.
Okay, basically, I'm a UK-based investigative researcher into the UFO phenomenon. I haven't been doing it as long as some of the well-known names on the circuit in ufology, but basically, back in March 1993, I was one of the main witnesses to the Cosford UFO incident, also known as the British UFO mystery. And from that day onwards, my interest in the subject just stayed with me. And in 2007, I became aware of that incident. I realised how important my account and sighting was. And from that day onwards, I've now developed that interest to become a well-known investigator, not only in the UK, but around the world. Founded UFO Shropshire, and now here I am, and I investigate everything connected to the phenomena. So.
Okay. Now, you've had some interesting experiences in your time. You mentioned the Cosforth incident, but quickly tell us, just give us a tease, because I'm going to grill you a little bit more on this, but tell us about the Area 51 incident.
Yeah, Area 51, Nevada, USA, on the 14th of May 2012, myself and some colleagues that I was filming for a production managed to get ourselves detained at Area 51 at gunpoint, lay down in the desert for 3 hours with a gun in our backs. We were grilled by the FBI and the military, and it wasn't a very nice experience. However, I came away from that. I'm still here. And I took some information with me as well. So we got up close and personal to Groom Lake in Area 51. And I can tell you now, if my belief of what was going on there was strong before, it's now even stronger.
Wow. Now, just to paint a picture for people who don't know, and you can Google this, but there's so far you can get when you're approaching Area 51, and there's all the signs saying, do not trespass. And isn't there something that says something like... excess force will be used or something? What's the sign say?
There is, yeah. I mean, basically, you can't get within 25 miles of that base.
And it's a huge area, isn't it? It's something like the size of Wales, isn't it?
It's pretty much the size of Wales, and it's surrounded by mountain ranges. And to put it in perspective, one of the military security guards, with his weapon in my back, said to me, "Sir, if you get lost, your body will never be found."
Nice.
And the signs do clearly say no photography, do not pass this point. if you walk past this point, you may be shot. In other words, excessive force will be used, and they've got some pretty nifty bits of kit that can tell who's walking around where they shouldn't be.
Then did you know what you were doing? Did you just cross the point that you weren't supposed to cross, or was it dark? How did it happen? How did you end up having a gun pointed at you?
It was a collective decision. You know, we were filming for a documentary. We knew what the risk was, and all 12 of us, you know, we said, look, there's no security. One thing that I want people to realise is this is in the middle of nowhere. This is a top secret military base. However, at the barriers, at that gate, there was no one around. There was no one there. So we said, OK, fine, let's just walk past the barriers. There's no one there. And we filmed, and then no one came. And then all of a sudden, bam, they come out of nowhere. So, yeah, we knew that we were taking a risk, although I think we may have got carried away in the moment and we didn't realise what we'd actually done. But very, very lucky.
Okay.
That's all I can say, really.
Interesting stuff. I want to know more about Area 51 and your whole take on it, but we'll talk about that next week. I think you're going to fill us in as well on some of the current stuff that's coming out in ufology as well, because there's lots of new research happening all the time. We might have an abductee who's going to be coming into the studio. She wants to remain anonymous, so I can't give her a name just yet. We'll have to make up a name on the night. But I think you're going to ask her a few questions and work out whether she's the real deal or not as well, aren't you?
Yeah, cool. And I think, you know, it'll be good for the listeners to hear it from a real-life investigator. You know, it's not just about seeing strange objects and strange lights in the sky. It's about everything else. It's about abductions. It's about crop circles, animal mutilations, and even top-secret military test aircraft. It all comes into it. And you have to keep up to date and you have to research it because nobody else is going to do it. If it isn't for people like me, the public aren't going to get the info or knowledge. So.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm really looking forward to having you in. Darren, for now, thanks for joining us on Planet X, and we'll catch you next week.
Fantastic. See you next week.
The radio show that officially does not exist. This is Planet X. Planet X on City Talk 105.9.
Darren Perks there, the top UK UFO researcher, on the show next week. Looking forward to that. That's it for this week. Thanks again. Thank you to my guests contributing to the show tonight on the chemtrails. And don't forget, if you'd like to get involved with the show, if there's anything you'd like to know, if you'd like to enter the competition to win tickets to see David Icke live at Wembley, it's all on the website. There's also links to Twitter and Facebook. And, of course, the forum's getting more and more popular day by day. So get on there and get interactive with the show. planetxlive.co.uk. planetxlive.co.uk. We'll catch you next week. Have a good week and stand by. Pete Price is on the way. Good night.
Planet X. Planet X. Produced by Sugar Butter Media for City Talk 105.9. All rights reserved. Planet X. The truth is on air. City Talk 105.9.
Do with the paranormal, the spiritual, the supernatural, then do please get in touch with Steve. He just loves anything a bit weird, don't you?
I've been looking into the red-eyed vigilante of Runcorn. You know, it's gone a bit quiet there, but I'm on his trail.
He's on there. He's on there. So anything a bit weird, then Steve is your man. Get in touch with them via the show, planetxlive.co.uk. By the way, if you want to get any questions on chemtrail-type questions tonight, for any of our special guests, then lots of different ways you can get in touch. You can text talk to 61025. So it's talk, the word talk, then your question, tell us who you are as well, and send it off to 61025. Or you can also do it via Facebook or Twitter. Jackie is standing in for Dan until he gets here. There's quite a few things coming through already.
Oh, there is,
There is. We have quite a few pictures coming through from Paul Chambers over some of the skies in Chester last year.
Interesting photographs.
Yeah, they are quite interesting. I've actually posted onto the website the what in the world are they spraying? So if everybody wants to have a look at that. And again,
try and do it after the show because it's about an hour long.
Yeah.
It is. It's about an hour and a half, but it's all there for viewing.
Because I put the full-length version on. Sorry. And also, there's some pictures that Paul's taken. These are taken above his house in Warrington. So yeah, keep the
photos coming, guys. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Just on the subject of the forums, thank you to everyone who's been getting in touch on the forum. Some cracking stuff on there. And apologies. Last week, of course, it was David Icke and Steve. You couldn't make it in.
No.
But you know what? I don't even think it would have mattered if any of us
David,
hadn't turned up.
I've known David for years, you know, and it's the same old story. You know, you ask a question, you get a 20-minute reply.
He's
but
a
it's
great
it's
speaker.
Absolutely riveting, isn't it?
Brilliant speaker.
And
But we couldn't get any of the forum questions in. I think we managed one or two. So sorry.
It happens. But hey, do you know what? He's here to talk. And the amount of information he put out in the short space of time that we had was amazing.
Absolutely.
It was brilliant.
And some of the feedback was that it was nice to actually hear David talk without being interrupted. So, you know, it was good little bit of feedback. But hi and welcome if you are a new listener to Planet X. Right, next we're back with Chemtrails.
Planet X. The truth is on air. City Talk 105.9. The radio show that officially does not exist. This is Planet X. Planet X on City Talk 105.9.
This is inevitably military or something going on. The government, the Air Force, they send out what's known as CHEMTRAILS, and it's a way to experiment with the radar systems. And when you see this kind of a pattern like this, you can rest assured there's something going on. They're actually little bitty magnetic and little bitty strips of, whether it's aluminum, you know, they change it, but what happens is the radar...
reasons. And then I got an email last night from Dane saying that he couldn't make it because something has happened over there in the States.
It happens, especially on subjects like this, you know.
Yeah. So anyway, Dane said, listen, I've got somebody else for you, and I've just been chatting to him on the phone before we came on, and he sounds like a very interesting guy. He was also in the film, and his name is Mark McCandish, and just to give you a little bit of his background, he has spent 30 years working in defense and classified black projects. He's a whistleblower, and he has also, this is the interesting thing for me, he's been working with back engineering what he calls off-world vehicles.
Off-world vehicles? Interesting.
I like the sound of that. Yeah. So we'll be talking to Mark about that and also his view on chemtrails, the murky world of atmospheric geoengineering, commonly known as chemtrails. What's your take on it?
Well, you know, it shifted over the years. I mean, from 30 years ago, you didn't hear anything about chemtrails. I mean, I remember as a kid, you know, all those blue skies go to Wales every year. It was 80, 90 degrees, clear blue skies as far as you could see, and that was the same for year after year after year. And then all of a sudden, the weather changes. You know, and you have to start questioning, well, why is the weather changing? And I have seen aircraft flying over, and I've seen the way they populate, they produce these sort of layered clouds, and they seem to just spread across the whole sky, causing this haze effect. And of course, you know, we're kind of waving slowly waving by to the blue skies, aren't we?
Well, we just got to, because I don't want to dumb the subject down a little bit, but just for any of our listeners who don't know what we're talking about, there is, of course, a contrail, which is the condensation trail, or streaks of condensed water vapor created by an airplane or a rocket
only
at high
happens at
altitudes.
Of course, certain heights.
And that's a
we see them.
contrail.
Yeah, because they disappear very quickly, Neil.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can watch them and you can clearly see the difference, because contrails, you know, there's obviously something else in there, not just your normal, you know, not just vapor. There's something presumed to be added to it.
So this is chemtrails.
This is the chemtrail, and they plume out, get bigger and larger, and they spread over, and they literally haze across the whole sky. Now, I live very close to an international airport back up at Manchester, and, you know, you're very lucky to catch a little bit of blue sky, because these things, they just completely cover the sky, and it's from right through. And unfortunately, you know, it causes, obviously, people, you don't go to see the good weather anymore. But the conspiracy side to that is that what are they putting up there, and the reasons why.
Okay, well, we're going to be talking more about what in the world are they spraying. It's a great film, and I do implore you to watch it. It's widely available on the internet, but we will get the links on the website and on the Facebook. I think Jackie's going to do that very soon for us.
Planet X. The truth is on air. City Talk 105.9.
This is City Talk 105.9.
This is not a drill. I repeat.
repeat, this is not a drill. Do not be afraid. We are now in control of what you hear. 1, 2, 3, testing. A journey to the far reaches of knowledge and the unknown.
I can't believe I just saw that.
From aliens to angels, conspiracies to cover-ups.
One soul and preeminent power.
From extraterrestrials to exposing the truth.
I'll try to explain as much as I can.
You're listening to Planet X.
You're listening to Planet X.
Planet X, exclusive to City Talk 105.9.
I'm Neil Atkinson, and welcome to another Planet X Live, each and every Sunday here on Liverpool's City Talk 105.9. We're on digital, we're online, and we're on YouTube across the world. So, what's it all about? Well, if you're a newbie, if you're a first-time listener, I know we've got quite a few after the ICKE show last week. It's where we discuss each and every Sunday all things supernatural, paranormal, spiritual, all of that to exposing the truth and unraveling suppressed news and alternative views. And to help me out each and every week, we have our Planet experts, Stan the Man, Jackie Highway, and Steve Mera from Phenomena Magazine. Welcome, welcome, guy.
Good evening.
How are we? We okay?
We're fine, yes.
No Dan the Man just yet. Apparently, I've been told the dilithium crystals have run out. And,
no.
Warp Factor 7 is not working. He's basically missed the train.
Oh.
So he's apparently on his way as we speak.
Good,
so hopefully he should be joining us very soon. But anyway, Jackie and Steve are here. We're going to be talking to local researcher David Lloyd and live from the States, a guy called Mark McCandish a little later on, as our main topic tonight is all about chemtrails. Now, there's a bit of a story. If you're tuning in and thinking, hang on a minute, it says on the website you've got Dane Wigington. Well, we originally were supposed to have Michael Murphy, who is the American filmmaker who made What in the World Are They Spraying? And
Fantastic
why in the World
film,
Are They
by
Spraying?
the way.
It's great, yeah. And we're going to try and get it. If you've not seen it, we'll get it on the Facebook and on the website. The link's there, so you can have a look at that. Now, Michael pulled out a couple of days ago for family, but there's a clip that I'm going to play from it, and he kind of sums it up really well. He's a brilliant author, G. Edward Griffin. This is his take on the whole subject.
I'm very aware of the chemtrail versus contrail controversy. As far as I'm concerned, it's an open and shut case. I have been watching the development of jet travel from its very beginning. I used to live near the Los Angeles airport. Remember when the first jets came in and landed? Man, they made a big noise. We never heard a noise like that before. And we used to go down and sit at the end of the runway and watch these jets come in and take off because it was a novel experience. I've been watching jets all my life, and I know about jet contrails. I've watched them. They're vaporized moisture, ice crystals, and they get out there in the atmosphere, and then they effervesce and evaporate and then disappear, and you can see them. The plane moves along, and the little white trail follows right behind it, and usually about 10 or 20 lengths of the plane or thereabouts, and then it's gone. And you can still see them that way, by the way, once in a while. So there goes a contrail. These other things we're talking about are not at all the same phenomena at all. These planes go by, and they billow out this white smoke, and it covers the sky from horizon to horizon. It doesn't dissipate at all. And they crisscross each other, and you see this thing cover the sky and turn it milky, and then people start having trouble breathing, and then you hear stories about the aluminum and barium deposits that they're picking up and the residue. And you put it all together, and I don't see how anybody who's got their eyes open and their mind open can come to any other conclusion but that somebody is spending a lot of money and effort to spray the planet. The question is, why? I have my own theories, but I hope that there will be some good investigative reporters go out there and get us the answer.
There we go, a clip from the fabulous film, What in the World Are They Spraying? That was the author, G. Edward Griffin, summing it up quite nicely there, I think. This is Planet X. We will get into the whole chemtrails debate in just a little while. But first, Steve, tell us about your week in the world of the weird.
It's been absolutely hectic because obviously National Geographic pumped out their little Wild Coast Files 2, which is a TV show all about weird and strange things. And I was actually investigating things that fall from the sky in this case. And I
think the links are on the Planet X Facebook page, aren't they?
There's some links there. And it was a fascinating subject regarding panspermia and where these things may have come from, and is there extraterrestrial biological isotopes in it? You know, is there evidence of that there's a mass amount of life in space? That went out on, and I think they are repeating them over the National Geographic Wild Channel. So
it's worth just checking it out just for Steve's crazy professor moustache.
They do me up really well. Crawling across the fields and analysing.
How long ago was that you had that?
Oh, it's only 18 months ago, but you know, you have to fit the part, don't you?
Absolutely.
But it is available on YouTube for viewing anyway. It's listed under Bird Apocalypse. It was about strange birds as well, about sudden flocks of birds just falling out of the sky, so that was interesting. But we've also had some UFO sightings. Now, for some of our listeners, they might recall not too long ago of an alleged rocket or satellite burn up in orbit, and it pretty much came right over the UK. It was seen right across
I think
the
Gail
country.
posted some stuff on the Facebook
She
page.
did.
Well,
Now, that was really interesting because she actually claimed to possibly have seen a UFO after the event, or very close to the event, and she posted up a photograph. Now, I had a look at that photograph, and I'm a little bit confused over it, so I'm going to have to talk a little bit more to Gail about that and what she actually saw and what she actually photographed. But we've also had other people who have contacted us regarding their claim to have seen something a little bit odd. Literally seconds or minute after the incident of watching this, I mean, I was lucky to see it pass over the house, weren't we? I mean, we did see it. And I tell you what, it's like a scene out of Armageddon. You know? I've never seen anything like it. What? And all these things were exploding off it. It was absolutely fantastic. And but I didn't. That's all I saw. But people have been contacting me saying that they saw an object with a string of blue lights around it, and it was moving relatively fast. So we're wondering if people have seen this sort of thing, very close to that event. So we're working on that. We've also had a haunted pub the other day in Reddish. Very interesting because we looked at some of the footage that they have, and we were scratching our heads, what could this be? And it was only happening on one of the cameras, so we went downstairs and absolute pub's full of people, and we thought, well, glad the landladies kept it low-key and not told everybody. So we're there looking at looking at this camera and seeing if there's any explanation for these strange things it's picking up during the night. And all of a sudden, the DJ throws on Ghostbusters, and everyone's up and standing there and looking at us. And I thought, oh, no. So it was a quick retreat from there. But I think we may have found a rational explanation for that one. Yeah. We think it could be a bug in the lens. Yeah, and what happens is, because it's so close, the CCTV camera is just creating a blur, and that blur seems to move around. Now, when people are looking at it, it's like when you capture these dust orbs in front of your camera. When you look at the photograph, you think they're actually in the room, but they're very close to the camera, and I think that's exactly the same thing that's happening there. And so we've managed to be able to rationalise that. We've got a few other things.
Steve, I hate it when there's a boring explanation for it.
In the camera, it does happen, but let's not take away the fact that there are strange paranormal things that do take place, and they are plentiful, across the country, but I think in this case we've managed to find a rational explanation.
Okay. Well, if you find anything weird and wonderful out there, anything